Welcome to the Clear Admit MBA Admissions Podcast. I'm Graham Richmond, and this is your wiretaps for Monday, June 20th, 2022. I'm joined by Alex Brown from Cornwall, England. Alex, how are things going?
Very good, thank you, Graham.
So I'm in Baltimore, as you know, and I'm here because of, as I mentioned last week, there's a big conference going on this week for admissions professionals. So all the admissions officers, directors of admission come to this conference, which is put on by GMAC, the makers of the GMAT exam. And it's the first time I've been in 3 years because of COVID. So it's kind of weird to be back in person at an event like this, but it's been a lot of fun so far.
So you've been around Fells Point and the Inner Harbor, I take it?
Yes, yeah. So I know Baltimore gets a little bit of a bad rap, but I've been having a great time. The area where the conference is taking place is gorgeous. The weather's been nice, and I've been running into admissions directors from basically all the top schools. Everyone's here. There are admissions directors from all over the planet here, and it's a little bit smaller than past years, but obviously people are still easing back into in-person events. But I've been bumping into people from Berkeley, Ross, Chicago, Yale, Tuck, Georgetown, MIT. It's just, the list goes on and on. So Stanford.
Nice.
I'm seeing a lot of old friends and people that and I know from even way back when we were working at Wharton. So yeah, it's been fun.
Very good, very good. Pass on my regards.
Yeah, we'll do.
Anyone you see.
So what's going on?
Because we are recording this whilst you're still in Baltimore.
Yeah. I
just
still have another.
Clarify.
Yeah, still have another day or so. So let me know what's going on right now with the kind of coming season. If I'm an applicant, anything that's been happening that I need to be aware of.
Yeah, the upcoming season, it's about deadlines getting released, essay topics starting to filter out, and so on and so forth. So, on the Clear Admit site, we tend to try to update those deadlines, and our essay topic analyses pieces, which I think are very good actually, get those updated as soon as the new essay topics, or even if it's the same essay topics, get re-released for the upcoming season. So there's a lot of that. I won't say there's no activity for the closing season. We're still seeing a little bit of waitlist activity out there. And obviously HBS hasn't yet released its 2+2 program results. That's still a couple of weeks away. So we're certainly more focused on the upcoming season, but we can't lose sight completely yet of the prior season.
Yeah, so still a little bit of movement happening. On the essay topic analyses, I did want to point out, because it's a question that we get all the time, that we don't share sample essays on our website. And what we do in the essay topic analyses that we post is really just break down the question, why we think the school's asking it, and how one might go about preparing a response. We think that's much better than giving kind of sample essays, which will ultimately, whether consciously or subconsciously, shape the way that you, the applicant, write your essay. So we don't want you to kind of read sample essays. We want it to come from you, but we try to give you a lot of guidance. So you definitely read those if they, as we publish them. So it's a lot of fun. Every year is kind of a busy project for us, but we think it's worth it. It feels like candidates get a lot out of it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and even if candidates are using other admissions consultants, you might as well also avail yourself to our free advice, as it were, in that case. And our philosophy is, we'll provide you a lot of resources and guidance through the process, including things like the essay topic analyses.
Yeah.
But you still have to do the work. We firmly believe the candidates should be doing all the work, but with, all the resources that can be provided to help you really understand the process and therefore deliver your best candidacy.
Yeah.
So that's basically, I would say that's basically our philosophy, Graham.
Yeah, and you must know this, but I don't think I've met an admissions consultant out there who hasn't told me that they love our essay topic analyses and that they often read them. So I think, definitely good thing to do. So I guess a couple other things before we get into the candidates. And so one of them is we continue to publish these Real Humans pieces on the website. We had a couple of McKinsey employees this week that we profiled. One is a Michigan Ross grad who just graduated in 21 and is an associate at McKinsey. This guy's from India originally, went to one of the IITs, which are the most prestigious kind of engineering schools, was an electrical engineer over there, then did, well, that was the studying, sorry, that was an electrical engineer major, and then financial services, consulting, data analytics was kind of this person's work experience before they went off to Ross. This guy gave some interesting advice and just basically said, I wish I had been told to spend time understanding myself and my goals clearly. Think about your personal stories, the whats and the whys. You need to know your North Star, as there will be a plethora of things that you will keep experiencing during your MBA journey, and time will be a very scarce resource, especially in the first few months. But at the end of the day, don't take things too seriously and make sure you enjoy the journey as everything works out. But I think that's a good point, this idea of going into the program with a North Star, with a mission, so that you can be selective about what you take part in, because you really do have so many opportunities once you arrive in business school.
Yeah, I would say this person, absolutely fantastic, had not been part of the Clear Admit community, because if there's nothing that we don't focus on more, it's really understanding your goals, why you're doing this,
right.
and why that will really help you make the most of the MBA experience.
Yeah.
So it's not the reason why schools really want to understand this is also to help candidates really make the best decisions. So fair play to this candidate. And I do recognize that folks coming newly into the MBA admissions process, they don't, you would think your chances are purely based on your track record, what you've done, and your academic record and profile, and so on and so forth. But goals do matter.
Yeah, they do.
And yeah, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and then the other woman that we profiled, a woman named Simone Williams, who's a Cornell Johnson grad, back from 19, so been in the workforce for a few years now, and is actually an engagement manager at McKinsey. Originally hails from Boston. She went to Columbia for undergrad, did Teach for America, and then got the MBA over at Johnson. And she had an interesting, it's funny, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say this, but her piece of advice for those tuning in who are going to be going off to business school someday was build relationships with MBAs across schools. Your class is not just limited to your respective school. When you start in your post-MBA job, you'll join another class of incoming MBAs. So get a head start, make relationships with MBAs from an array of schools. They'll be your post-business school classmates. So I thought that was just an interesting way to look at it. And I mean, she's absolutely right. When you go and take that first job out of business school, especially at a place like a McKinsey or an Amazon where they're hiring tons of MBAs, you're going to be thrown into the mix with people from all these different top schools. And so, yeah, thinking of them as your peers and as part of your kind of, quote, class is a smart bit of advice, I think.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. So, Alex, the only other thing is, remember last week I asked you some kind of fun questions, these kind of real humans questions that I usually ask the admissions directors, and then you said you wanted to put me on the spot too and ask me some of them. So I don't know if you want to do that this week or you want to wait for another time, or.
Let's do it.
All right. Okay.
Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Tea. Excellent choice. Excellent
Yeah.
choice.
It's funny. I wouldn't have said that in the past, but it's been a few years now that I tend to drink tea in the morning instead of coffee. Yeah. So there you have it.
Nice. Very good. Do you still drink coffee?
No, never. I mean, occasionally a decaf or something, but no.
We're both coffee free.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
Excellent. Favorite adult beverage?
I guess if I'm limited, I would say wine. I really like wine with food. If I'm just sitting around like having a drink and there's no food involved, well then beer does come into the picture, definitely. But
what is a beer in your vocabulary? What do you mean by beer?
Like
Are you talking lager?
Well, I mean, preferably something on...
Like that yellow sparkle, yellow fizzy stuff, or proper bitter?
No, I would rather have proper beer, something on draft, ideally on a hand pull, not super carbonated. Yeah, I think you and I are similar in our taste for beer. Like no Coors Light or anything
You're not saying Coors or Budweiser or whatever.
No, thanks.
Very good, very good. All right, favorite comfort food?
This is, I would say like a chicken parm hoagie. Because maybe it's because I've been living in France too long and we just don't have like chicken parmesan sandwiches in France, but I miss that from the States.
Wow, that's different. I mean, I'd say living in France, you've got to be surrounded by beautiful cuisine.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of good food. Yeah.
Very good. Pet peeve a pet peeve you have. Sorry.
Uh, I would say people who don't ask questions or like who don't seek to learn from those that they meet. And maybe that's because I'm at a conference now, and you always kind of run into people and or meet people for the first time, and I'm always wary of someone who doesn't ask me anything, just wants to sort of talk about what they're doing. So that's a pet peeve of mine.
Right. Right. No, I like that. Very good. Favorite quality in others?
This is easy for me, a sense of humor.
Nice.
Like, somebody who can make me laugh is, yeah.
Nice. So my stand-up comedy gig when I was at Wharton, that puts me in good stead.
Well, I don't know. I'd have to go. Yeah, I have to call up the memory banks here. I don't know if I actually ever saw. I know we were at the. Was this happening at the pub sometimes, like where they would do it? No, it was just.
No, downtown.
Oh,
downtown.
then I didn't go.
We hired a whole.
I didn't go to that.
Proper stuff.
Okay, yeah, no, I didn't go to that then.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But you seem, you're generally a funny guy. Yeah, I would. Yeah. The another quality I would say on this one is that I'm also a big fan of anybody that knows how to drive a manual transmission car. Because, and again, maybe it's because I'm at the conference, but I overheard this guy downstairs talking about how the valet at the hotel was unable to park his car because it was a stick shift, which is just so odd to me. But I guess that's where we're at now,
Yeah, very odd. At least they're still trying to drive these autonomous or self-whatever driving cars. I can't get my head around that.
Yeah, no, I guarantee you, like in 20 years, the problem at the hotel will be, there'll be the person who's like, oh, we don't know how to park a car that doesn't park itself,
Right.
We'll see. Yeah. Anyway, this is fun. There are other questions that we can do over the course of the next handful of episodes if you want. Other than that, let's get into our candidates. I did want to mention people should sign up for our essay workshops in July. These are by far and away the most popular Clear Admit events. Again, we have like 4 or 5 schools at each essay workshop. And we just ask them questions about how they come up with their essay questions and what they look for, how they read when they're reviewing a file, all that stuff. So, and the list it's really an all-star list of schools. Just go to bit.ly/CA MBA essays, and you can sign up in advance. We've already got lots of people signing up, so I encourage people to head over and register. And again, literally, I'll just mention the first one, which is July 13th, is going to have Berkeley, Chicago Booth, Dartmouth, and UVA Darden. And yeah, the list goes on from there. Each subsequent week, it's like a really amazing group. We've got, Columbia, MIT, Stanford, Wharton, all the big guns, and they're all going to join us to talk about their essays. I cannot think of a better way to prep for the admission season here. So join us for that. And then other than that, Alex, it's just if people want to email us, they can send a message to info@clearadmit.com and use the subject line wiretaps. We love hearing from our listeners, and we'll respond if you write. So send us a note. Anything else, Alex, from you before we dive in?
No, let's kick on.
All right. So this is Wiretaps candidate number 1. So this is an ApplyWire entry that you've picked out, Alex, and this candidate has 9 schools on their target list. They are looking to go in the fall of 23, so they're in the thick of beginning that sort of process of applying. And they've got Columbia, Tuck, Georgetown, MIT, Kellogg, Chicago, Wharton, Darden, and Yale on the target list. This candidate is currently a congressional staffer for a member of the U.S. House of Representatives. They're thinking about maybe venture capital or private equity in a post-MBA career. And they listed Sequoia Capital, Andreessen Horowitz, and it's they're thinking about those types of firms for their target. They've got a GPA of 3.56 from a respected liberal arts college. That's how they described it. Well-respected small liberal arts college, sorry. And they have 5 years of work experience to date. They asked, and you kind of engaged with them on this, but they gave us a lot of information about their work experience, which sounds super impressive and unique to me. But their big question for you, and I know you engaged with them on it, so I want you to kind of tackle it, was whether or not they should do a kind of part-time MBA in DC, and just keep working, or whether they should throw their hat in the ring on a kind of full-time MBA role. So full-time MBA program, sorry. So, Alex, what do you make of this candidacy? They haven't taken the test yet, but they're thinking they're going to land in the mid-320s with their GRE score. But yeah, what do you make of this candidacy? Because we don't see congressional staffers every day here.
Yeah, I mean, quite honestly, I think from an experience standpoint, this candidate could really stand out. It's super interesting experience, seemingly at getting exposure at quite a high level, and so on and so forth. So I think they really check the box in that regard, for the top tier full-time MBA programs. So, I mean, it's quite interesting. This candidate has basically identified two paths that they are looking to try to figure out which to pursue. As you said, one is get a part-time MBA, presumably in the DC area, and continue on with what they're doing. And there's a natural pathway going forward, and it's a good pathway, and you know, everything's set in place, and they even justify the MBA versus public policy degrees, et cetera, et cetera. Or pivot and do something quite different using the full-time MBA to make that pivot. And my sort of overarching advice is they don't necessarily need to make that decision yet until they have all their options on the table. So I think what they need to do is do the part-time application, you know, with the you know, the goals related to that, and do the full-time applications at top-tier programs with a different set of goals, because that's why they're looking at the top tier, and see what options that ultimately provides them. And then make the decision of whether it's best to remain in DC, go part-time, and continue on that path. Or if they had an option at one of the M7 or something like that, is it going to be more attractive for them at that point to make that pivot? And I think one of the issues in terms of what would make them really stand out, so that they could be a top candidate at the top full-time programs, would be really showing the quant aspect of their candidacy. So whether that's you know, taking the test score and doing very well on the test score to complement their strong GPA, and certainly the quant aspect of the test score, and or adding MBA Math or HBS Core to sort of really show that their readiness for the full-time experience. I guess, you know, to cut it short, Graham, I don't think they need to absolutely make the decision now which pathway to pursue. They can keep their options open by targeting both the part-time and the full-time options.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like, this isn't an either or. It's probably just they can explore both. I did want to mention, I mean, one of the things that jumped out at me, I mean, you might say, oh, staffer for, you know, House of Representatives, like how is that, you know, going to be great sort of pre-MBA experience? But I wanted to underline the fact that the person that they are a staffer for is on the House Financial Services Committee. And so they mentioned that, you know, they've written bills. They routinely work with stakeholders in banking, capital markets, housing, and crypto industries. And you know, they work with federal regulators like the SEC, FDIC, et cetera. So I think it's unique kind of staffer experience in that it's very finance oriented. And so I just wanted to put that in because I recognize someone listening might be saying, well, how do they get from staffer on Capitol Hill to, you know, maybe banking or private equity or VC or something. Right. So I think there are some dots that can easily be connected. I wanted to ask you a question. Does it matter who this person is that they're a staffer for? Like, because there are members of the House of Representatives who are kind of lightning rods for, you know, media coverage and so on. But do you have, I mean, what would you say? Like, they're going to probably have to say who they represent. Do you think it matters if this is a Democrat or a Republican or an independent? I mean, does that stuff matter?
I don't think it should matter.
Yeah.
Especially when they focus on themselves, their work product, their impact, and what they've done, rather than the philosophy of the staff member themselves.
Agreed.
You don't want to, you know, I mean, hopefully that's quite an obvious distinction, and we talk about that in terms of when you talk about religion, politics, and money, you've got to approach those three broad topics with some degree of sensitivity.
Right.
But it certainly doesn't preclude those that have worked in for political candidates and those in office from the process. But yeah, we're interested in what they've done rather than which side of the fence they're on.
Yeah, fair statement. So I like this candidate's odds. When I first read the storyline and looked at it all, my feeling was, wow, if they can get the GRE score they are, aiming for, that this is, sort of a top full-time type MBA person for me. I just feel.
What's the weakest part of their candidacy, Graham?
Well, right now, I would say it's that they just don't have a test score in hand, and I'm wondering where that's going to land them, because they mentioned that they went to a well-respected small liberal arts school, and that's kind of fuzzy, right? I don't know what that means. Does that mean, is it like a top 10, or is it more like a top 50 that's just well-known or something, So that could come into play, because their GPA 3.56 is solid, but not off the charts or anything. And so I think the GRE's got to line up, and that'll help set the sort of bar for them. So I would encourage them to take that test seriously. Yeah.
Very good. Very good.
Anything else on this one? I did want to mention they have some great outside activities as well. They talk about how they're in like a softball league, and they're a big time runner, belong to a running club. So I feel like everything does line up otherwise. Great work experience, decent activities, solid undergrad, career path that is impressive and lines up with their future goals. I don't know if they'll be able to jump right into VC, but, they could certainly go to banking or something and then make their way. So I like this candidacy. I think, do well on the GRE, and they probably land at a top, sort of full-time program, but keep the door open. They can look at part-time. That application process is often much later anyway. So they have a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. The part-time, generally, the application process is going to be a little bit later. It's going to be a little bit less rigorous, nothing against part-time programs, but yeah. So focus on these full-time programs for now, but don't, make sure that there is an application into the top part-time program within their sort of commuter area, which I assume is Georgetown, but I mean, I'm not as familiar with those programs.
Yeah, in the D.C. area, you've got Georgetown, Maryland, Hopkins has one. But it's Georgetown's sort of the leader, I would argue. There's a few other schools right in D.C. too, George Washington and stuff. But in any event, probably enough said on that one. Should we move on, and let's get into Wiretaps candidate number 2? So this is another ApplyWire entry that we received, and this candidate is going to apply, I believe, this summer and wants to start in the fall of 23. They listed 24, but reading what they wrote, I'm pretty sure they want 23. They've got Harvard, Michigan, Kellogg, and Booth on the target list. They've been working as a doctor, so as a physician, so they're in the healthcare space, and they would like to pivot and use the MBA to get into pharma. And they mention Merck, Pfizer, and Johnson & Johnson as target companies post-MBA. Their GPA from undergraduate was a 3.3. They have 6 years of work experience, and this person's located in Germany and they claim to land either Chicago or the East Coast, or maybe go back to Europe after business school. The one big wrinkle is that they're 35 years old, and I believe that's probably because of all the schooling that they've done, because they not only have an undergraduate degree and an MD, but they also have a PhD, and somewhere in there they did like a master's degree in like English or something. I can't remember where that one was, but in any event, they've got master's degree in literature with a 4.0 GPA. So they're kind of, we'll get into this, but they on paper look like what I would call degree collector, because undergrad, master's, PhD, MD, right? So now they want an MBA. But in any event, they really want the MBA to make this transition. So Alex, I'll kind of turn it over to you, because there's a lot of impressive kind of work experience and stuff. And I did want to mention they don't have a test either at this point, so far as I know. So I think that's another piece that's got to come into play. And the last bit before I ask you is they just left us a note that said that they love the podcast, and that they said, big shout out to Alex and Graham for helping me navigate the wide unknown field of MBA admissions. So always appreciate hearing stuff like that, and are thrilled that they're hopefully tuning in to get some kind of live advice here, or at least audio advice. So Alex, what do you make of this though? Because this is a very unusual case in terms of the age of the candidate and all that.
Yeah, I hate to break it to you, Graham, but they're waiting another year.
Oh, they are? Okay. Okay. I must have missed that part.
Yes.
Oh, man. Okay.
So they're planning ahead. The 224 is,
Okay.
2024 is in line with what they stated.
Okay.
And I know there's a wrinkle here in terms of they appear not to like Philadelphia, Graham, and I know that sort of gives you a bit of a visceral reaction, right? Because they
Yeah.
deliberately didn't include Wharton in their selection.
I saw that. Yeah.
Because they prefer Chicago over Philadelphia, which I'm not sure why, but
Yeah. Wow.
there we go. Anyway, the person also speaks 8 languages, and is clearly super smart, accomplished, done some, they basically they have 6 years of experience. You said they've done very well in that 6 years, but they have about 25 years of academic experience, all told, or whatever. So they're obviously clearly smart. They've done a lot of things, but as you say, they do run the risk a little bit of appearing a degree collector. Mm-hmm. So what we mean by that is, MBA admissions folks, they want folks that are doing the MBA to go on and do really meaningful professional things in the long run that have impact on society and so on and so forth. We've talked about that on several occasions. What they don't want is just people going from one degree to the next. Oh, now I think I'll just go get this degree or whatever. I absolutely don't think that is the case for this candidate. They have family. They're going to uproot and relocate their family for this. So they're going all in on pursuing the MBA. So there's real genuine sentiment and a great rational reason for getting the MBA in terms of their transition to pharma and doing leadership in the pharma industry makes perfect sense for a candidate like this. But this notion of being a degree collector, they've definitely got to just make sure that that's not something that the AdCom is going to be a little bit concerned about. I mean, frankly, Graham, I laughed about this a little bit before, but I just didn't understand the masses in literature. It just didn't seem to sync with a lot of the other stuff that they'd been doing, and the 8 languages. Yeah.
But I mean, is there any other degree for them to collect after the MBA? So maybe that's working in their favor.
Yeah.
Like, what other degree could they go and get? They've got them all, right? So
Yeah.
No, but in all seriousness, I totally agree with you on this front. That I think another thing we used to call it in the admissions office on this point is, in addition to kind of a degree collector, we might call it a kind of lifetime student, right?
Yeah.
Someone who just wants to be a student all the time.
Yeah.
So, but I agree. I don't think that's I think they're going to be okay in
Yeah.
this domain. They seem like they have a plan.
Yeah, this is not going to be the case for this candidate. As I said, they've got family. They're looking to relocate their family, so they're clearly all in on this.
Yeah.
And they've done very well. Their goals make perfect sense. So the real outlier here is when they apply, they're going to be 36.
Yeah.
So that does put them on the outer end of the range for full-time programs. Full-time program makes perfect sense for this candidate because they're doing a career switch, and so forth. So they need that immersive program to enable the transition and so on and so forth. But they're going to have to show fit. And in the case of this candidate, being an older candidate, one of the stereotypes regarding older candidates is that they're going to go to the classes, they'll do well in the classes, but they won't get fully involved in the extracurriculars and other aspects of the MBA experience. So they want to dispel that myth again in the applications and really show that they're going to fully engage and so forth. And, again, they're relocating their family, so they're going to have to explore the options for their family whilst they're in, Chicago or Philadelphia or wherever they end up going for their business school. So they need to recognize that piece. They need to do really well on the GMAT or the GRE. I'm convinced they will because they are super smart.
Yeah.
They've got 5 degrees. They've got 8 languages that they know. I mean, brilliant. The fact that they're German really plays well because European candidates are underrepresented in top US business schools. So there's some advantage there. So I would say quite an unorthodox candidate, Graham, but if they really nail the GMAT, overcome some of these potential sort of areas that could trip them up, I think they could be a very viable candidate, even for the very best programs that focus on healthcare management.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the only thing I'm going to add here is when I look at the school selection, and they mentioned they're going to be relocating with their family and everything. But when I look at the school selection, I would encourage them to look at Duke. I would encourage them to look at Wharton, and I would encourage them to look at MIT Sloan. And there are two reasons for that. One of them is all three of those programs are great for healthcare. And I think the schools on their list, the Kellogg's, Michigan's, Harvard's, Chicago Booth, they're all excellent schools too. I'm just saying if I were them, they're still a year out from applying. I would add these three and carefully investigate the whole group to kind of come up with a list of, the 5 or 6 they're going to ultimately target. I just think all three are perfect. The other thing, the reason I bring them up is because this candidate is going to be pretty old by the time they start business school, for as far as their classmates are concerned. And so I was thinking of some of the programs that seem to historically be a bit more open-minded about older candidates. And so MIT comes to mind, Wharton comes to mind. These are schools that they put such a high value on work experience and that sort of seasoning that they don't, that every year they're admitting a handful of people who are kind of off, on the older end of the spectrum. So I would encourage them to, cast that wide net, look at all these programs. I could not agree more, though, that most schools, when you see a candidate from Germany, they're so few and far between that if this candidate has good numbers, does well on the test and can explain a very coherent career path and a desire to get involved in the program, they should end up with some options. So it's going to be, I would not encourage them to apply to just 4 schools. Like, I think they're going to need to cast a little bit of a wider net to ensure that they land somewhere. But I like the candidacy, and I think they did a good job of explaining everything. So that tells me that when it comes to time to write those essays, that they'll probably be articulate and able to convey, their plan. So again, very interesting candidacy. I'm glad you picked this one out.
Yeah. And the other thing I forgot to mention, they're first generation going to college. So not only none of their family had done that before, but they went to about 6 of them. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, they're making up for lost time in the family tree, right?
Yeah,
so,
brilliant.
Yeah. So, all right, well, I want to thank that candidate for sharing. I also hope that they're recovering. So not only are they a physician, but they've done a ton of work on COVID. And so I wrote them a response kind of saying, hey, here's my advice. And then I didn't hear back. And I was like, oh, because normally when you write a comment to someone, you hope that they're going to acknowledge it. And there was like no word for a few days. And then they did write more recently and said that they'd been laid up, ironically, with COVID. So hopefully they're feeling better. And anyway, thanks for listening to the show. Let's move on, though, and talk about our third candidate. So this is Wiretaps candidate number 3. Another ApplyWire entry, Alex, because we're definitely in that mode where everyone's wondering what their chances are and putting together their strategy. So this is a candidate that has 11 schools on the target list, and those schools are Berkeley, Duke, Georgetown, Harvard, LBS, Michigan, MIT, Stanford, Wharton, Darden, and Yale. This person's hoping to start school in the fall of 23. They've been working as an educator and a founder of a company prior to business school, and they're thinking about consulting after business school or possibly entrepreneurship, and their GMAT score was a 730. GPA is a 3.78. This person has 8 years of work experience, so another slightly older candidate, although I think they're probably around age 30, if I'd guess. They are a first-generation white British male with, and I guess that means first-gen to college, so they're white British male with an undergrad in chemistry from a Russell Group university. And for those of you not from the UK, the Russell Group is, kind of like the Ivy League in America, so good schools. They they're currently located in Taiwan. That's a key piece of information that I neglected to mention. They have been working there they basically started as a teacher, worked their way up to lead an academic department, and then set up a business to help private schools add kind of international and kind of languages, I believe, to their curriculum. So in any event, this candidate wants to land on the East Coast or in the Bay Area after business school. So Alex, you went back and forth with this candidate and had some pretty deep conversation. I mean, they really were kind of sort of thinking through their whole plan and strategy on our site, which was very cool to see. But what do you make of this candidacy?
Yeah, I mean, an interesting candidate for sure. Their numbers very solid, like you say, 730, 378, first generation British candidate. So, again, much like the last candidate, the top US programs aren't overwhelmed with British candidates or European candidates generally. I still think we're in Europe, so I should say non-EU
Right.
and EU candidates. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so there's a lot to like there. Their career progression is unorthodox. They've ultimately ended up in Taiwan and done some interesting things in Taiwan, actually, in terms of, in the education sector. It looks like they started off as a teacher and then sort of evolved and so on and so forth. And then they ultimately set up their own startup, etc. So I'm sure they can show lots of good growth and evolution and impact and sort of the things that AdCom are looking for. They seem to have a pretty decent plan for getting the MBA in terms of focusing on EdTech, so getting some consulting experience and then focusing on EdTech, which is something obviously related to what they're doing. So quite honestly, Graham, I think there is a lot to like about this candidate. Their school list is quite broad at the moment, which I think is perfectly fine. They'll end up narrowing that list as, they basically want consulting then entrepreneurship. So they've really got to target the best schools that they can get into. But overall, I'm pretty impressed with what this person's done. It's kind of interesting. They got was it a chemistry degree? I think that's what it was, like a chemistry degree. They ended up in Australia doing some sales and then to Taiwan. But then they stayed in Taiwan. So I don't know, other than, their networks and their professional sort of experiences, whether there's also some other connections in Taiwan that's potentially going to keep them there in the longer run when they've completed business school. But yeah, I think an interesting candidate, Graham.
Yeah, and I will say, just so everyone understands, I mean, literally this person, I don't know why they studied chemistry or how that fit into their kind of career narrative after, university. But, they basically ended up being department chair of a multinational science department in Taiwan and managing, more than 10 people or something in that. It was like a local, kind of private school, I guess. But then they left that and started their own consultancy, as I mentioned earlier, where they're working with schools to help them transition to a bilingual or international curriculum. So very interesting stuff. I feel like, they have these nice kind of ed tech potential goals and things. So I want to also, you mentioned in terms of their outside activities, they do stand up, which, I'm sure appeals to you, and storytelling. And they also are a lead singer and guitarist in a band. So they have a lot going on outside of work too. So it seems like a well-rounded candidate. And as long as they can kind of explain their path and have a clear, feasible set of goals, like I think there's a lot to like here. You do raise a good question as to whether they're going to head back to Asia. I mean, on their post here on ApplyWire, they just mentioned wanting to go to the Bay Area or maybe East Coast of the U.S. So,
okay, yeah.
I'm not sure where they would land in the longer term, but
yeah.
It is something to consider.
Yeah.
But I feel like this person, just has a real wealth of experiences, and so seems pretty interesting to me.
I think certainly the first candidate and this candidate, they have unorthodox career paths. And what I mean by that is, a majority of candidates applying to these top-tier business schools are going to come from a number of well-understood sort of industries and career paths.
Yeah.
And candidate 1 and candidate 3, and you could argue candidate 2 too.
Yeah.
But they're all unorthodox. So the key for each of these candidates is twofold. One is to be able to clearly articulate to the AdCom their career, their progression, and the whys behind the decisions they made. That's going to be really important. And then why the MBA? Because again, they're unorthodox. So The MBA admissions readers haven't seen a lot of candidates that have made a similar sort of set of decisions. So they want to really learn about why it makes sense for these types of candidates. So on the one hand, they've really all got to do a very good job of articulating their career trajectory, as well as being able to sort of show how comparable it is to the more traditional career paths in terms of their impact and their growth and so forth. And then the second piece of the pie is, they've got to really sort of establish that fit and show that they're going to be able to make the most of the experience and so on and so forth. Because again, they just have they're a little bit different, so they got to articulate the fit. So
Yeah.
I think if all three of these candidates can nail both of those ideas, or whatever you want to call it, it's going to be really helpful to them.
Yeah, and I want to say, I thought it was intentional, but these are, I agree. It's like three unorthodox candidates in terms of their, experience, and in case of this, second two candidates we reviewed this week, both of them are a bit older. So there's a lot going on, and I could not agree more. They just need to show that they're going to fit in, that they have a set of reasonable goals, and so on. I think. Yeah, very interesting though. And I feel like all three of these candidates would add a lot to the classroom environment. So I think they all could be very appealing to business schools. They just need to make sure that they come off right.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other side of the coin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. An unorthodox candidate can add actually more value than an orthodox candidate that looks like several others in the same classroom, right?
Yeah,
so,
agreed.
So they definitely come in with the opportunity to really stand out. But to stand out, ironically, they got to show how they really do fit in.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, we'll leave it there. I appreciate you picking these out. Again, I thought it was on purpose, so it's really serendipitous that, we had this nice theme this week, but really appreciate you picking these out. I want to encourage everyone that's tuned in to please rate and review this podcast wherever you listen. Shout it from the rooftops. Tell anybody. The more folks that tune in, the better off we are. And Alex, I guess I'll see you in 1 week's time, and we'll do it all again.
Brilliant. Take care, everyone. Good luck.